The massive ship appeared without warning in Earth's orbit, its sleek metal hull reflecting sunlight as it positioned itself above the blue planet. At United Defense Force headquarters, screens flashed with urgent alerts while technicians scrambled to analyze the unexpected visitor. Admiral James Walker stood with his hands clasped behind his back, his weathered face revealing nothing as he watched the situation unfold. At 53, Walker had spent his life preparing for this moment, humanity's first contact with an advanced alien civilization. "What do we know?" he asked, voice calm despite the chaos around him. "Nothing, sir," replied Lieutenant Ben, his fingers flying across the display. "They're not responding to hails, but they haven't taken hostile action either." Walker nodded. "Keep all defense systems at ready status, but hold fire unless I give the order." 3 hours later, a smaller vessel detached from the mothership and began its descent toward the designated landing zone near the Global Council building. Military units formed a perimeter while world leaders gathered nervously inside. Walker watched from the command center as live feeds showed the alien craft touching down with surprising grace for its size. A door slid open, revealing tall, insect-like creatures with iridescent exoskeletons and multiple limbs. They moved with unsettling precision. "Morax," muttered Dr. Ellis, the xenobiology expert beside him. "At least, that's what we'll call them until we learn their actual name." The delegation of 5 aliens entered the council building. Walker switched to the interior feed, watching as the lead alien approached the human representatives. It wore ornate armor that seemed both decorative and functional, with symbols that likely denoted rank. "I am Commander Vex of the Galactic Hegemony," the alien announced through a translation device, its voice oddly musical despite the mechanical delivery. "We have come to offer Earth the opportunity to join our empire." The room fell silent as the aliens presented their terms. The Morax spoke with absolute confidence, describing their vast empire spanning thousands of worlds. They explained how Earth would benefit from their protection and technology in exchange for a reasonable tribute and military submission. Walker listened as Earth's politicians asked questions, noting how the aliens answered with thinly veiled condescension. The terms became clearer as the meeting progressed. Earth would essentially become a vassal state, mining its resources for the Empire's benefit while surrendering all meaningful independence. "We understand this is much to consider," Commander Vex said finally. "You have 30 Earth days to accept our generous offer of integration." After that time, the alien made a gesture that needed no translation. As the meeting concluded, Walker made his decision. He left the command center and took a transport to the landing site, arriving just as the aliens were preparing to return to their ship. "Commander Vex," Walker called out, approaching with purposeful strides. His uniform was simple compared to the world leaders, but his authority was unmistakable. The alien turned, compound eyes gleaming with mild curiosity. "Yes, human." "Admiral James Walker, United Defense Force," he introduced himself with a slight nod. "I wanted to ask you something before you leave." "Proceed," Vex said, towering over Walker by nearly 2 feet. Walker looked up at the alien, his eyes clear and steady. "You've never fought humans before, have you?" The alien's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. "Your species is new to us, yes. Does that concern you?" Walker's expression remained neutral. "It should concern you." He paused, letting his words hang in the air between them. "For your sake, I hope you never do." Commander Vex stared at Walker for a long moment before turning away without response, boarding the shuttle with his delegation. As the craft lifted off, Walker watched it disappear into the clouds, already planning humanity's next move. The warning had been delivered. Whether the aliens would heed it remained to be seen. On the Morax homeworld, the Great Hall of the Hegemony buzzed with activity. Massive crystal displays showed images of Earth, its cities, military installations, and people. Commander Vex stood before the High Council, 12 ancient Morax, whose exoskeletons had dulled with age, but whose minds remained sharp as ever. "These humans are primitive," Vex declared, gesturing to the images. They have barely established colonies on their neighboring planets. Their most advanced ships use crude propulsion systems. High Counselor Traz leaned forward, her mandibles clicking thoughtfully. Yet you mentioned this warning given by one of their military leaders. Vex's antennae twitched in dismissal. A bluff, nothing more. This Admiral Walker attempted to intimidate me with empty threats. The council chamber filled with a sound like dry leaves rustling. Morak's laughter. How amusing, said Counselor Dren. In 8,000 years of expansion, every species ultimately bends to our will. Some resist longer than others, but the outcome never changes. Across the room, military advisors studied Earth's defenses. General Mox, the hegemony's senior strategist, pointed to Earth's orbital satellites. Their defensive capabilities are laughable, Mox said. Primitive kinetic weapons, basic laser systems, nothing that poses a threat to our warships. Only one voice raised concern. Advisor Krill, oldest among the military council, studied the human faces displayed on the screens. There is something in their eyes, he muttered. I have seen it before, in species that fought beyond rational limits. His observation went ignored as the council finalized their decision. Earth would be given its 30 days as promised. If they refused integration, a standard pacification force would be deployed. 30 warships, a tiny fraction of the hegemony's vast fleet. Back on Earth, Admiral Walker worked tirelessly. In underground bunkers and secure facilities around the globe, he coordinated humanity's response. World leaders who had once bickered over trivial matters now united under the imminent threat. We have 26 days left, Walker announced to the Emergency Military Council. Every hour counts. Maps and diagrams covered the walls as Walker outlined his strategy. Representatives from every major military power listened intently as he explained the hidden defense systems that had been built in secret over decades. Project Nightfall was designed for exactly this scenario, Walker explained, revealing plans for orbital defense platforms concealed behind stealth technology. And Operation Labyrinth gives us our best chance for counterattack. Colonel Tom Davis, representing North American forces, looked skeptical. You really think we can stand against an empire that spans thousands of worlds? Walker's eyes hardened. They've never fought humans before. That's our advantage. As Earth prepared, the alien deadline approached. Factories worked around the clock producing weapons and equipment. Civilian populations trained in emergency protocols. Space stations that had once housed scientific experiments were quietly converted to military outposts. On the 30th day, Earth's unified government transmitted their response to the waiting Morak ship, a firm rejection of the hegemony's terms. Hours later, hegemony sensors detected a massive fleet entering Earth's solar system. 30 warships, each capable of destroying entire cities, moved in perfect formation toward the blue planet. Commander Vex observed from the command ship, satisfaction evident in his posture. Begin standard approach. Prepare pacification protocols. The hegemony fleet decelerated as they reached Mars orbit, expecting to encounter minimal resistance. Long-range scans showed Earth seemingly unprepared, its orbital defenses sparse and outdated. Strange, muttered the sensor officer. I'm detecting no unusual military activity. No fleet movements, no defense activations. Vex clicked his mandibles in amusement. As expected, they hope we will show mercy if they offer no resistance. As the fleet moved past the asteroid belt, Vex opened a communication channel to Earth. Attention humans, your time has expired. Prepare for integration under hegemony authority. The only response was a simple text message, transmitted directly to Vex's command console. It contained just 4 words. We warned you. Run. The hegemony fleet approached Earth with absolute confidence. Their warships moved in perfect formation, weapons systems humming with energy as they entered the optimal bombardment range. Commander Vex stood on the bridge of his flagship, compound eyes fixed on the blue planet displayed on the main screen. Begin standard intimidation protocol, Vex ordered. Target 3 uninhabited areas for initial strikes. Show them our power before we begin negotiations. The weapons officer prepared the targeting systems. All ships report ready. Commander. Firing solutions locked. Earth hung silently in space before them, seemingly defenseless. No ships moved to intercept them. No planetary defense systems activated. Commence firing, Vex commanded. Before the order could be carried out, a junior sensor officer straightened suddenly. Commander, I'm detecting unusual energy readings from Earth's moon. Specify, Vex demanded, antenna twitching with irritation at the delay. The readings are inconsistent with natural. The officer never finished his sentence. The surface of Earth's moon, which had appeared barren and lifeless, suddenly transformed. Massive sections of the lunar surface split open, revealing hidden hangars embedded deep in the regolith. From these openings poured hundreds of small fighter craft, launching in perfect coordination. Deception, Vex shouted. Raise shields. All ships, defensive positions. The hegemony fleet scrambled to respond, but the human attack had only begun. Throughout the solar system, previously undetected platforms shed their stealth fields. These stations, disguised as asteroids or debris, powered up weapon systems that locked onto the hegemony vessels. Admiral Walker watched from his command center deep beneath Earth's surface. Execute Operation Hornet's Nest, he ordered calmly. Earth's fighters, smaller and more agile than anything the hegemony had encountered before, swarmed the alien vessels. They didn't attack head-on as expected but used erratic flight patterns that hegemony targeting systems struggled to predict. Their tactic makes no sense, shouted the hegemony tactical officer. They're not targeting our weapons or engines. They're attaching devices to our hulls. Vex watched in growing horror as the first explosion rocked a nearby destroyer. The human devices were fusion bombs designed to attach to specific weak points in hegemony shield architecture. Vulnerabilities humans shouldn't have known about. How did they? Another explosion cut off Vex's question as two more hegemony ships went dark, their systems overloaded. Walker's voice came through on all hegemony communication channels. We studied the wrecks of your scout ships that crashed on our planet over the past century. We learned your technology, your tactics, your weaknesses. While you saw us as primitives, we were preparing. 3 more hegemony warships exploded as their reactor containment fields failed. The remaining ships attempted to regroup, but Earth's fighters had scattered them across a wide area, making coordinated defense impossible. 7 ships lost in the first assault, reported Vex's second-in-command, mandibles clicking in distress. 4 more heavily damaged. We cannot maintain formation. Vex stared at the tactical display in disbelief. His 30 ships, enough to subjugate an entire sector, were being systematically dismantled by a species that had never ventured beyond their own solar system. Commander, incoming transmission from the lunar base, the communications officer announced. Admiral Walker's face appeared on screen. His expression was not triumphant or gleeful, but grimly determined. This is your final warning, Commander Vex. Withdraw your remaining ships immediately or none will return to your hegemony. Vex's pride warred briefly with his survival instinct before reality won out. All ships, emergency retreat. Return to lightspeed coordinates. The surviving hegemony vessels began disengaging, abandoning their damaged comrades as they prepared for faster-than-light jumps. Earth's fighters pulled back, allowing the retreat. As his flagship prepared to jump, Vex received one final transmission from Walker. Don't come back with more ships. This was just our first line of defense. On Earth, Admiral Walker watched the hegemony fleet retreat, their numbers reduced by nearly a third. He turned to his officers, face grim. They'll be back with a larger force. Begin Phase 2 immediately. He pressed a button on his console, sending a pre-programmed order to Earth's hidden fleet. Pursue. No survivors. The grand chamber of the Galactic Council fell silent as the holographic display showed another hegemony outpost going dark. This was the sixth such loss in just 14 days since the initial defeat at Earth. High Counselor Traz slammed her appendage against the ancient stone table. How is this possible? They were contained in a single system. The tactical officer, a young Morax named Lev, advanced the display to show the current positions of known human forces. The humans captured 3 R vessels intact during the first battle. They've adapted our lightspeed technology with unprecedented speed. An older counselor leaned forward, eyes reflecting the red warning symbols on the display. But our empire spans thousands of systems. Even with our ships, they cannot hope to defeat us. General Mox, who had replaced the disgraced Commander Vex, stepped into the center of the chamber. It's not their numbers that concern us, counselors. It's their methods. The display shifted to show footage from the recent battles. The Council watched as human ships executed maneuvers that defied conventional space combat doctrine. Where hegemony forces relied on centuries of refined formations and predictable engagement patterns, humans fought with seemingly reckless abandon. They don't fight like civilized beings, Mox explained. They use deception constantly. They sacrifice ships to create openings. They target supply lines instead of military assets. The footage showed human vessels hiding in asteroid fields, shutting down all systems to avoid detection, then powering up only when hegemony ships passed nearby. It showed captured hegemony communication relays being used to transmit false orders, causing Imperial ships to fire on their own allies. Most disturbing, continued Mox, they've begun broadcasting detailed accounts of our defeats to all our subject worlds. Counselor Dren chittered nervously. Propaganda. Effective propaganda, Mox confirmed. 3 outer colony worlds have already declared independence, believing we cannot protect them. On the other side of the galaxy, Admiral Walker stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Defiance. Once a simple Earth vessel, it now incorporated salvaged hegemony technology, making it faster and deadlier than anything humans had built before. Status report, Walker ordered, studying the star map that showed the location of all human battle groups. Colonel Davis, now his second in command, approached with a data tablet. Strike Team Alpha has disabled the supply depot in the Centauri sector. Strike Teams Beta and Delta have successfully disrupted communication relays in these sectors. He highlighted several star systems. The hegemony forces in these regions are now effectively cut off from Central Command. Walker nodded in approval. And our message broadcasts. Very effective, sir. We've received responses from 17 formerly subjugated worlds offering alliance against the hegemony. Walker allowed himself a small smile. What about Project Phantom? Ready when you are, sir. Walker's plan was working. Rather than attempting to match the hegemony's overwhelming numbers, human forces were systematically dismantling the Empire's infrastructure. Where the hegemony expected direct confrontation, humans struck from the shadows, vanishing before counterattacks could be organized. Back in the council chamber, the debate had grown heated. Some counselors advocated committing the entire Imperial fleet to crush Earth once and for all. Others urged caution, fearing that concentrating their forces would leave other sectors vulnerable to the human hit-and-run tactics. These humans fight like no species we've encountered, admitted Advisor Krill, who had warned them from the beginning. They seem to have studied warfare as an art form. Impossible, scoffed another counselor. They've barely existed as a unified planetary government. That's precisely it, Krill replied. They haven't spent millennia at peace like us. Their history is filled with constant conflict. Against themselves. They had thousands of years to perfect the art of war against opponents who think exactly like they do. The chamber fell silent as this realization sank in. The hegemony had grown complacent through centuries of easy victories against disorganized opposition. They had forgotten what it meant to face an enemy that embraced war as a fundamental aspect of their nature. General Mox broke the silence. We must adapt to their tactics or face extinction. But Walker was already 3 steps ahead, implementing the next phase of humanity's first interstellar war. 3 months after the first battle, The galactic hegemony had finally marshaled its full might. Thousands of warships gathered in formation near the Empire's core worlds, a fleet so vast it blotted out the stars themselves. High Commander Draz stood on the bridge of the Invincible, the largest battleship ever constructed by the Morax civilization. A veteran of countless campaigns, Draz had been pulled from retirement to lead this decisive mission. His aged exoskeleton bore the marks of past conflicts, and his reputation for ruthless efficiency had earned him the nickname Planet Breaker. "Is the Armada ready?" Draz asked, his voice carrying the weight of 8 centuries of military service. "Yes, High Commander," replied his second, a battle-hardened Morax named Kiv. "All ships report battle readiness. The jump to the Sol system is plotted." Draz nodded, mandibles clicking with grim determination. "The Council has been clear. We will end this human rebellion once and for all. Their homeworld will be reduced to ash as an example to any who would challenge the hegemony." The massive fleet entered lightspeed simultaneously, creating a flash of energy visible across 3 sectors. The hegemony's response had taken months to organize, but its scale was unprecedented. Not since the Unification Wars had so many Imperial ships moved together with a single purpose. When the fleet arrived at Earth's solar system, they emerged in careful formation, ready for immediate combat. But instead of meeting resistance, they found an eerie calm. "Scan for enemy vessels," Draz ordered, suspicious of the quiet. "Nothing, High Commander," reported the sensor officer. "No ships detected in orbit. No active defense systems." Draz narrowed his compound eyes. "And the planet itself?" After a moment of scanning, the officer looked up in confusion. "No signs of large population centers. Energy readings are minimal. It appears abandoned." "Impossible," Draz hissed. "Scan again." The results came back the same. Earth, cradle of humanity, appeared deserted. The cities stood empty. Ports and spaceports showed no activity. Even the orbital infrastructure seemed lifeless. "Approach with caution," Draz ordered. "This has the scent of a trap." The massive fleet moved slowly toward Earth, sensors at maximum sensitivity. As they passed the orbit of Mars, scouts reported that the Red Planet's colonies also appeared abandoned. Where could billions of humans go? Kiv wondered aloud. Draz had no answer, but every instinct developed over centuries of warfare told him danger was near. Deploy scout vessels to search the outer system. Check for hidden bases or fleets. As the main fleet continued its cautious approach to Earth, they passed through a field of orbital debris, remnants of satellites and space stations, apparently damaged during the human evacuation. The first explosion took everyone by surprise. A piece of debris, seemingly no different from thousands of others, suddenly flared with energy. Then another, and another. Within seconds, hundreds of objects revealed themselves to be carefully disguised antimatter mines. Evasive action. Draz roared, but it was too late. The mines detonated in sequence, creating a sphere of destruction that engulfed the front third of the hegemony fleet instantly. Ships vaporized in blinding flashes of energy, leaving nothing but scattered atoms. As the survivors attempted to regroup, a new threat emerged. From hiding places in the outer solar system, concealed behind moons, within asteroid clusters, and in the shadow of gas giants, the human fleet appeared. Not the small force the hegemony had expected, but hundreds of vessels of various sizes, many incorporating stolen hegemony technology. "It was a trap," Kiv gasped. "They knew we would come with everything." Draz watched as his carefully organized formation dissolved into chaos. The human ships attacked from all directions, cutting off retreat paths and isolating hegemony vessels from supporting each other. The Invincible shuddered as multiple impacts struck its shields. Draz held onto his command console, watching as ship after ship in his fleet went dark or erupted in flames. "Incoming transmission," announced the communications officer. Admiral Walker's face appeared on the main screen. Behind him stood his bridge crew, faces set with grim determination. "High Commander Draz," Walker said calmly. Your fleet is surrounded. Your retreat is cut off. We warned you to run." Before Draz could respond, the screen went dark as the first human boarding vessels attached themselves to the Invincible's hull. Evacuation alarms blared throughout the Morax capital city. Once proud towers that had stood for millennia now crumbled as panicked citizens rushed toward spaceports. Food riots had broken out in 3 districts, and Imperial guards struggled to maintain order. In the High Council chamber, the remains of the once mighty leadership argued bitterly. "We must surrender," shouted Councillor Traz, pounding her appendage on the ancient table. "Half our fleet is gone. 27 worlds have declared independence already." "Never," Councillor Dren replied, his once sleek exoskeleton now dull with stress. "The hegemony has stood for 12,000 years. We cannot be defeated by primitives from a single world." Outside the sealed chamber doors, common citizens gathered in growing numbers, demanding answers about missing food shipments and vanished defense forces. Admiral Walker watched these scenes from the bridge of his flagship. Intelligence drones, using captured hegemony stealth technology, transmitted real-time footage from across the Empire. 6 months had passed since the decisive battle at Earth, and Walker's strategy had entered its final phase. "The Tebran system has accepted our offer of protection," reported Colonel Davis, now showing signs of exhaustion after months of non-stop operations. "That makes 38 former hegemony worlds now under our alliance." Walker nodded, studying the strategic display. Red indicators showing hegemony control were shrinking daily, while green areas of human influence expanded. The pattern looked like a disease spreading through the once healthy Imperial body. "And our construction teams?" Walker asked. "The defensive platforms around the liberated worlds will be operational within 2 weeks," Davis confirmed, "just as you promised their governments." Walker's approach had proven devastatingly effective. Rather than attempting to conquer hegemony territory, an impossible task for humanity's limited numbers, he had systematically targeted critical infrastructure. Trade routes were disrupted, communication systems sabotaged, supply depots destroyed. Then came the diplomatic offensive. To worlds suffering under sudden shortages, humanity offered a simple deal: declare independence from the hegemony and receive immediate protection and aid. Many worlds, already resentful of imperial rule, needed little persuasion. "Sir," called out the communications officer, "we've intercepted an imperial broadcast. The hegemony is executing 3 more defeatist governors." Walker shook his head. "They're doing our work for us. Send word to our agents on those worlds. Offer immediate evacuation to any officials who feel threatened." The hegemony's response to crisis had proven predictably brutal. As food shortages spread, the Council ordered harsh rationing that favored the elite. As rebellions flared, they executed suspected leaders. Each heavy-handed action only drove more systems into humanity's open arms. Most surprising to the Morax leadership was what Walker didn't do. Human forces never attacked the Morax homeworld directly. This apparent mercy confused the High Council and sparked endless debate about human intentions. "Why don't they strike us?" Councillor Dren had demanded during an emergency session. "They have the capability now." Advisor Krill, looking older than ever, had laughed bitterly. "Because they don't need to. They're dismantling our empire piece by piece, and our own actions drag our subjects into their protection." By the 7th month, economic collapse had become inevitable. With trade routes severed and tributary worlds no longer sending resources, the Morax homeworld faced critical shortages. Imperial currency became worthless overnight. Government services collapsed in outlying provinces. On his flagship, Walker received a direct communication request from the Morax homeworld. When he accepted, he found himself face to face with High Commander Draz, now released from captivity in a prisoner exchange. "You never intended to destroy us," Draz stated, his once imperious voice now subdued. "Correct," Walker confirmed. "We only wanted to ensure you could never threaten us again. You could have bombed our homeworld into submission. Your ships have the capability." Walker nodded. We could have. But humans learned something important from our own history. Destroying an enemy completely only creates martyrs and plants seeds of future conflict. Better to let your empire fall under its own weight. Draz's mandibles clicked softly, a gesture of reluctant respect. The Council has authorized me to discuss terms of surrender. Not surrender, Walker corrected. Peace negotiations, to be conducted on neutral territory, with all former hegemony worlds invited to participate. As the communication ended, Walker looked out at the stars visible through the viewport. The empire that had stood for 12,000 years had not fallen through direct assault on its center, but through the systematic dismantling of its foundations, just as he had planned from the beginning. Europa gleamed like a jewel against the backdrop of Jupiter's swirling clouds. Once a frozen moon studied by early human explorers, it now hosted the most important gathering in galactic history. The massive dome of the conclave hall rose from the icy surface, its transparent sections revealing the stars above. Inside, representatives from over 200 worlds filled the circular chamber. Some were former hegemony subjects, others independent civilizations that had watched the conflict from afar. The diversity was staggering. Species of all forms and evolutionary paths gathered in one place. Admiral Walker, his uniform now bearing the insignia of the newly formed Earth Defense Command, stood at the central podium. Silver now dominated his once dark hair, and new lines marked his face, the cost of 2 years of warfare and the burden of countless decisions. 5 years ago, Walker began, his voice carrying through the chamber. A ship appeared above our world, bringing demands of submission. Today, we gather not as conquerors and conquered, but as equals seeking a better future. The audience listened in respectful silence. Some species had initially feared humanity would simply replace the hegemony with their own empire. Walker's actions in the months following the hegemony's collapse had eased those fears. Earth never wanted war, he continued. We simply refused to be enslaved. The conflict that followed was necessary but regrettable. At a table near the front sat Commander Vex, now serving as the representative of the Morax homeworld. His once brilliant armor was replaced by simple diplomatic attire. Next to him sat other former hegemony officials who had chosen cooperation over resistance. The document before you establishes the Interstellar Concordat, Walker explained. Its core principles are clear. Each world maintains sovereignty over its internal affairs. Mutual defense is guaranteed against external threats. Trade flows freely between member worlds. And never again will one civilization force its will upon another. The treaty had been months in creation, with input from every participating world. Even the Morax, their empire now reduced to their home system, had contributed to its formation. As delegates reviewed the final document on their displays, Walker stepped away from the podium. He moved to a quiet corner where Colonel Davis waited. "They'll sign it," Davis said confidently. "Every world sees the benefits." Walker nodded. "And the deep space monitoring stations. Fully operational. If anything larger than a scout ship approaches from the galactic rim, we'll have plenty of warning." Walker had insisted on these precautions. Humanity's sudden rise to prominence had attracted attention from distant parts of the galaxy. Other empires, some potentially more powerful than the hegemony, might view Earth as a potential threat. As the signing ceremony began, Commander Vex approached Walker. The two stood in awkward silence before Vex spoke. "My people still struggle to understand what happened," he admitted. "How did a species confined to one system defeat the greatest empire in galactic history?" Walker considered his answer carefully. "We spent our history fighting ourselves," he said finally. "We've had thousands of years to perfect warfare against enemies far more similar to us than you are. We didn't want to fight you. That's why we warned you to run." Vex's mandibles clicked softly. "A warning we should have heeded. The past cannot be changed," Walker replied, "but the future remains unwritten." As the ceremony concluded, delegates watched through the dome as a fleet of ships launched from Europa's spaceport. These vessels, bearing the new Concordat emblem, were headed for unexplored regions beyond known space. "Are those warships?" asked a delegate from a distant world. "Exploration vessels," Walker corrected, "with defensive capabilities. Yes, but their mission is discovery, not conquest." The ships climbed away from Jupiter, their engines leaving trails of blue light against the darkness. They carried scientists, diplomats, and yes, soldiers. Humanity had not forgotten the lessons of first contact. As Walker watched them depart, he felt a weight lift from his shoulders. The war was truly over. The empire that had threatened Earth was no more. In its place stood something potentially better. A community of worlds united not by force but by choice. The galaxy would long remember the empire that had never faced humans in war before, and the warning they should have heeded: run.